I look at our patient book and the consistency of it, it is remarkable. And through all those, and tariffs included, that's the new noise. There's always something. And our job as leaders is to block that noise out from the team and to say to the team, like, look, we just have to focus on the patient. Every single thing needs to be focused on the patient. So every decision we make, focusing on the patient care, the patient experience, and the rest will fall into place.
All right, welcome back to the Dental Economist Show with me, Mike Huffaker. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy the show, please like, subscribe, leave a review. Your support helps us deliver valuable insights to more dental professionals across the country. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Mick Janness, the CEO and co-founder of Oakpoint, a rapidly growing dental support organization. Mick has a wealth of experience in scaling DSOs, having successfully grown Oakpoint from a single supported practice to over 40 locations. His expertise in revenue cycle management, private equity-backed growth, and driving operational efficiency makes him a sought-after thought leader in the dental industry. Mick, it is a pleasure to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
It's great to be here. Thanks, Mike. Doing great. Excited for the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into the business side of things, let's take it back to the beginning. What first attracted you to the dental industry? Was there a particular experience or insight early on that made you realize this is where you wanted to be and where you wanted to lead?
Yeah, so it kind of all started back in 2013 to 14 kind of time frame. On the DSO side, I was actually on the dental product side prior to that, but had met a pediatric dentist in that time frame and just learned all of the trials and tribulations that he was experiencing and managing a practice and supporting a practice in a complex environment. We just started to philosophically talk about, what it would look like to create a support team around him that would help him focus on the clinical side of the house, focus on the things that he's exceptional at and enjoy doing every day. And that's where it truly all started there. And it was over a Subway sandwich lunch one day in his office. And that's where it all kind of started and it kicked off for me personally.
So you said that was around 2014. If you could, in your current self, go back and talk to your past self, what are some of the things that you could have shared with yourself that would have made this journey easier? Or maybe some like lessons that were hard to learn that you would have appreciated, avoiding in the first place?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, if I kind of could rewind the tape all the way to that time, I would really focus on the fact that, or, could refocus on the fact that it's a small business, right? And so it's very personal, to the selling doctors and the doctors that are kind of taking the step, and just understanding and getting to understand that journey a little bit, that emotional journey a little bit better. I think would have saved some steps, in the process. It's a very personal, it's retail healthcare. It's a very personal process and a personal journey for those doctors. And I think if I had known that, and, kind of knowing what I know today, then it would have made it a little bit more efficient, I think. And, that was probably one of the bigger, lessons learned in the process. And then the second lesson that I would love to have told myself and had known at that point in time is just how truly complex these one single site locations can be from the total patient journey all the way through that revenue cycle process. And in particular, the revenue cycle process, the scheduling. It's a very high touch business. It requires a lot of steps in the entire journey. And each one of those steps requires a lot of work. It's not just one off, right? And so that was a huge lesson learned. It's deeply complex, and I think the average person that just isn't in the bowels of a dental practice, in the mechanics of a dental practice each day, they may not fully understand or appreciate just how complex that is. And I think it's just getting more and more complex, and obviously technology will help solve some of those issues, hopefully. So those are two big lessons I would have loved to have known back then.
You kind of answered my follow-up question, but I was going to ask if on the RCM side, or with any of these kind of really complex processes that are specific to running a dental practice, have you noticed improvements in any of them, or are any of them getting better? Are they getting worse? And if so, why?
Yeah, it's definitely getting better. I mean, there's more integration at the practice management system level, right? And so the more modules that are integrated into that process, as opposed to third party tools that are being used on an ad hoc basis. All that is being integrated into the actual practice management systems, which is obviously making the steps much more efficient, reducing error in the process, more efficient, it's a better patient experience for the actual patient. It's, for him or her. It's just, that piece of it's very exciting, and you can kind of see where it will be, a couple of years from now after those modules are fully built out into the practice management system and the AI technology takes hold. It's just going to be a much better user experience, not only on the back end from an operational point of view, but it's also going to be a much better experience for the patient. And you can see it. It's getting better each month.
Yeah, so you have some hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Does it feel a little bit, though, that maybe overwhelming when you're evaluating technology and looking what's in the marketplace today? It seems like every week a new solution is coming up. Many times they're taking care of one small part of a much bigger problem. And it's like, how many of these do I need to stack on top of each other? Is this the right path? Is this person going to be around tomorrow? Like, do you find that complex to navigate? Do you feel like it's even the right time to be navigating that? Or is it, from your viewpoint, like, maybe hold off for a little while, we're still early, in this, kind of solution forming, and it might be better to wait until, there's some clear winners?
Yeah, it is extremely complex. I mean, you nailed it perfectly what you just said. There's so many different technologies out there that only solve a very small step in the process, not the whole life cycle of that process. And therein lies the complexity, right? And you start to add and stack technology upon technology, the integration of that, the lack of integration of that, right? The challenges in the trials and tribulations of being able to integrate that's truly what's made it, very complex. And so we've done a good job of just kind of stripping some of that down and taking it kind of down to the deck, if you will, simplifying it, trying to use as much as possible out of the individual practice management system and leveraging that, to the core. And I don't think personally we're going to see I think we're going to continue to see that as a challenge in the industry. And then it's further exacerbated when you look at each one of these technology companies. How are they financially backed? Are they financially backed? Do they have the backing to go the distance and truly providing a solution that's going to stand the test of time, or are they going to run out of money and capital in that life cycle of their deployment, right? And that's a huge concern. So, but we're continuing to always evaluating technology, no matter what. Our view is just continue to stay current, stay on top of it, and even if it's not something we're going to act on necessarily, let's continue to stay current and making sure that we've got a good pulse on the market.
Is there a story as to the name Oakpoint? Why you decided that would be the name of your organization?
Yeah, there is a story there. So we're based in Raleigh. Our practice footprints in Raleigh, North Carolina and South Carolina. Raleigh is actually the city of the oaks. So they've got an incredible oak tree population in Raleigh. So we wanted to find a word or a name that would be kind of central to the Carolina market, whether it was North or South Carolina. So we just looked at a bunch of different names and settled on Oakpoint. We thought it was simple, to the point, and also rooted in the in the Raleigh, the city of the Oaks model. So just thought that'd be kind of fun to launch with that.
Now, when you were building your organization, did you contemplate doing a branded approach versus keeping the branding of the acquired practices? How do you think about that strategy? I think Heartland's a great example. Of course, everyone, you don't know necessarily you're in a Heartland practice. If you're a patient, you're in Dr. Bob's practice, and then you have some other models like DECA, which is everyone is Ideal Dental, kind of all branded, and Dr. Ahmed's approach was, I want to do the Starbucks of dentistry. Like, how do you think about that in the dental space? What path did you all pursue, and why did you pursue it in that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. We took the non-branded approach. I like both, and there's absolutely application for both, especially from a regional standpoint. When you get that density and to have a branded strategy in a regional market, you can get really great fantastic economies of scale for marketing and just operating leverage from that standpoint. But from the non-branded standpoint, we felt it'd be a little easier to scale. We like the fact that we are, as a support company behind the scenes. We like the fact that it's not viewed as a corporatized environment from the patient's perspective. And that's just the approach that we took, and it's worked really well for us. So we do have some regional brands, in those submarkets because we're across 2 states. So we do have some regional brands that have good density, and it will continue to build and scale those brands. But we don't have a centralized brand.
Yeah, so how important is it for your practices to have some association with the identity of Oakpoint? I know that you're the support organization that runs in the back. I can appreciate 100% kind of that viewpoint of, from the patient's perspective, it's a non-corporate type of experience, which I think for many people is still really important. Do you seek to try to build kind of some fiber or connective tissue across all the practices that still align with the Oakpoint way? Do you really try to lean into, here is the autonomy that I think a lot of the providers are looking for, that you're able to provide? How do you think about that balance?
We lean heavily on the clinical autonomy for the doctors, and we communicate that loud and clear to the teams. Like, this is truly the doctor's decision and domain, expertise to drive each and every day. And we are behind the scenes and helping in those key kind of functional areas where they need the most help and where they want the most help and where, quite frankly, they'd like to spend the least amount of time. And that's just how we've done it. And so, I would say pretty heavily on the HR side, IT side, marketing, and finance. Those are the key kind of 4 functional areas where we provide a tremendous amount of support. But we're not, we're not going in and creating a branded core value set across, all of the 45, locations. A lot of those, facilities have had a core value set their own for years or decades. And our job is to not disrupt that and to help support that and lean into that. And our view of this is, we do no harm, support the practices, do no harm, stay out of their way. At the same time, really support them in those key kind of, 4 functional areas that I mentioned. And then, it's like anything. There are some practices that, it's a little bit like a menu, walking into your favorite restaurant, right? Some of those practices need everything off the menu, and some of them are exceptional already in some of those areas. And they really don't need a lot of help there. They may need just help in one area. And so, that's how we've just personally approached it.
So let's take the example of the exceptional practice for a second. And, assuming this is led by strong clinical leadership and, they've got a strong patient database already, they've, running a really good business and having great clinical outcomes. What is their incentive or motivation to affiliate at that point? Because I tend to think a lot of the times that, in the same way, if you're going to go and get investment from private equity, the private equity wants to have some recognition of like, well, here's the things that I can do to improve this business and make it better. And if you're looking to affiliate with a group, I think oftentimes it's like, hey, there's these things we do need help. But if somebody is a really kind of gold standard organization, what would you say are the main reasons that they seek to affiliate? And maybe not just with Oakpoint, but any group.
Yeah. So I think, there's 2 things here. So one, I'd kind of bifurcate it into 2 areas, let's say. So you've got, the older retiring doctor that's truly looking for a liquidity exit strategy. That makes a lot of sense, right? That's not really what we've built at Oakpoint, but there are other groups that focus on that and are a fantastic pathway for doctors that are looking for, hey, I want to step out in 24 months and do a work back and plug the practice in, and making sure that the team there's a transition there for the patients and the team. And then what we do and kind of how we look at it is, most of the doctors that have joined our group, I would say 95%, fit into they're at an inflection point inside their own life, right? Curve. And they're kind of looking at this and they're saying, okay, I want to continue to grow. I have a high degree of self-awareness around the fact that I need some help. I'm doing these things exceptionally well, but to take it to that next level, whatever that may be adding, 8 more operatories in my existing facility, or that could be going from 3 locations to 8 locations, in my particular MSA market. I know I need help. And so when I look at our doctors, average age is around 50. They've got a lot of gas left in the tank. They're hungry for growth. But they really truly understand that they need a partner for strategic vision and planning and capital and all those different things, right? And that almost all of our doctors kind of fit that profile, and that's why they've joined us. And so that's the message that that's our positioning. That's how we pitch the business and kind of how we position Oakpoint with the doctors that we talk to. So, and it's worked really well for us. Just staying true to that, it's worked exceptionally well for us. We're not a turnaround group. There's groups that specialize in that. There's groups that are exceptional in that. That's not us. I mean, we are really, I think, very exceptional at taking a really good practice and making them just completely off the charts exceptional. And we've been able to prove that time and time again, with our partners. So,
yeah, when you look at the past 4 to 5 years, I mean, there's been a lot of challenges that I don't think anybody anticipated ever happening, between COVID and then going from the ZERP era to high interest rates and inflationary pressures, hiring challenges. Like, the list seems to go on and on and on. What are some of the things that you look at dental and still say, like, this is a great place to be? And here's why. Because I think you can hear a lot of negative noise in the marketplace, because there are challenges and there are things that are difficult to overcome. But what gives you kind of that positive outlook still on the space?
Yeah, so I love to talk about this, because when you look at everything that you just listed off, and the list is long, no matter what, you can look at our patient book every day globally across the entire footprint, and depending on the day of the week, and depending on the month, we're treating anywhere from 700 to 1,000 patients each and every day. Like, tried and true. And sure, there's some bumps here, in there, but it is the consistency of that book, that patient book it's so incredible. And when I look at it, is I say to myself, if we can block and tackle, if we can fundamentally execute each day in answering the phone and filling that schedule, optimizing the schedule to the standards of the doctor and the clinical team, and re-care those patients and following up with those patients, if we can just provide exceptional customer service and that patient experience, we're going to win. We're going to win every day. That's what I love about this business, is that if you can just fundamentally execute some really basic things, that they're not easy at all, but it's also not rocket science either, right? And you have to just really deliver exceptional service, and you will win every day. And I look at our patient book and the consistency of it, it is remarkable. And through all of those, right, and tariffs included, right? I mean, that's the new noise, right? And there's always something, right? There's always something. And our job as leaders is to block that noise out from the team, and to say to the team, like, look, we just have to focus on the patient. Every single thing needs to be focused on the patient. So every decision we make, focusing on the patient care, the patient experience, and the rest will fall into place. It really will.
Yeah. So no demand issue. And when you think about in the practices themselves, though, across all of the providers that you have, do you see fluctuations in case acceptance and other metrics where you're thinking, like, there's could be more positive outcomes happening here that are not, like, you have this kind of clockwork, this machine that's going. So what are the things that you look for at that point to continue to optimize over time?
Yeah. So absolutely love the recare KPI, phenomenal, lots of opportunity there. Some practices are unbelievably exceptional. There's always room for improvement, even if you're at the exceptional level. There's always an extra point or two to squeeze out in performance there. Without a doubt, that's one of the biggest ones. One of my personal favorites is unscheduled or not activated treatment. At a business of our size, we have millions of dollars at any given moment of treatment that's just not activated or in the system, not on the schedule. You can always reach into that bucket and pull it out with good execution. The telephones. I mean, I talk about the phones all the time. If you're in the mid 80s, you're missing opportunity. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, you've got to be at 95% or better. And you have to own it. I mean, you just have to own it and understand that if you're below that, you're delivering a substandard level of customer service, quite frankly, right, to the patient, not acceptable. And you have to just always, work to be improved. And even at 95%, you can be, more efficient, right? You can shrink the minutes of the call with the patient. Instead of a new patient calling in, taking 7 minutes, can you get it to 5 minutes? The patient doesn't want to talk on the phone for 7 or 8 minutes. You got to be more crisp, right? You got to be more crisp. So those are just some really kind of high level ones. And then also, of course, conversions. And it's always fascinating, I think, to look at providers who have a high, conversion rate versus ones that struggle a little bit in that area, right? And I think that's just an enormous opportunity on the clinical side of the house. Is taking those doctors that are exceptional at getting those cases converted and activating treatment, and then coaching up those doctors that may not be as great at it, right? I mean, that's our job, is to put really good people together and coach and teach and train and just elevate everybody's performance. That's why we're here. And so those are fun things to work on, and I love that about this industry. It's like, boy, there's just everywhere you look, there's opportunity. You got to seize it. There's no demand issue, especially in fast growing markets like we're in. I mean, we're one of the fastest MSAs in the country. There's no demand issue at all. It's execution on our part.
How do you think about new clinical tools, new technologies that are in the marketplace, and the potential for, and maybe you do this already, adding multi-specialty within your practices?
Yeah, so we're technically a multi-specialty group. We're pretty unique. So we've got about 145 locations, 85 doctors, surgeons across the network. We've got, it's a multi-specialty hub and spoke model, where our doctors are, referring to one another. I think on the technology front, the one thing that's been interesting to me is being, not a doctor by trade, but fascinated with the clinical side of the house and just how things occur and kind of roll through the system there. And technology, it's interesting to me that the AI technologies have not been adopted quite as much on the treatment side as personally I would expect. And I think you'll see that change, just continue to grow. But from my perspective, and again, I'm not a doctor, don't proclaim to be, don't try to act like one. But I'm just thinking to myself, if I'm a doctor, I'm in that treatment room and I'm using technology to help kind of tell the story, right, visually to the patient, why not do that? And why not leverage technology to help me tell that story more efficiently, with conviction? And I think, we do have a handful of providers that do that, really well. And it's fun to watch. I mean, they're really good at it. And I would love to see more, use it, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think when people start to view it as a partner, not a threat, then that kind of narrative changes a bit. It's funny because my dentist does not have any radiographic AI, and I wish they did, because I kind of want to see like what my images look like with it overlaid, and just kind of have that conversation and be like, oh, okay, well, this all makes more sense to me now. It's not just various shades of gray that I'm staring at. And it has nothing to do with any sort of doubt of the capability of my dentist. I think he's fantastic. I think he's great. But it would just be additional kind of credibility built and trust built between us in a way that we don't have today, because I don't understand what he's looking at, even when he tries to show me.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I think that'll just get better and better, and that'll be fun to watch. It'd be very good for the industry too, right? Mitigates risk too. That's a part of the topic that, is not spoken about a lot. A lot of it's about treatment planning and treatment conversion. And I think there's a lot of, there should be a lot of discussion about risk mitigation. And I think that's exciting to think about as well. Just, good clinical outcomes, better clinical outcomes.
I will say the coolest thing I've seen in my dentist office is I had to get a crown, and he's got the CEREC machine, and like they just shove the thing in your mouth and go around like this. The next thing you know, it like prints this like perfect crown. Like you wait for 40 minutes and it's ready. I was blown away by that. I was like, this is super cool. This is cool stuff.
And that's a great outcome for the patient, right? I mean, you don't want to have to come back, right? I mean, if you don't have to, you'll make that happen for the hour to complete the treatment and be done with it, and not have to come back to the office. And again, that's all that patient experience and just being there for the patient and really listening to the patient and what their needs are. We live in a fast-paced world; every minute counts. People are very cautious with burning minutes, and if we can save those minutes and be efficient, they'll do that all day long. So,
were you able to execute the hub and spoke multi-specialty model from the outset, or did you have to reach some point of scale before it became possible to do? I'm just trying to think like from like a regional perspective when you first launched and you have your first practice. Like at what point are you looking at it saying, now this makes sense, or was it always the plan from the get-go?
Yeah, it was always a plan for the get-go. We've just, personally feel like there's a tremendous strategic value in being able to, let's call it, keep it under one roof, if you will. And it's really very good for the patient, of course, right? You're getting great care. The doctors are collaborating and communicating about your treatment plan in an efficient manner. And so that was always the get-go, but it definitely took some time to get some scale. And we truly started with one supported practice. So, there's not a lot there, right? And that was in September. We closed on our very first partnership in September 2019 of all months, just a few months before the pandemic rolled downhill. And so, from there, it took us a little time to get, some scale. But once we got the density, and now we're just trying to replicate that density and that same model across the various markets that we're currently operating in. So we've got a full-blown hub and spoke model in the Raleigh market. We're pretty close to getting there in other markets as well, but not quite there yet. We just need a little bit more density in the various markets that we're in.
And are you offering ortho, oral surgery, pediatric, kind of run the whole gamut?
Correct. So everything but peds right now. Not that we're against peds at all. We just haven't found the right partner yet to fit the profile. So, eventually we'll get there. We've talked to a lot of pediatric dentists, we're not quite there yet. So, in one of our MSAs, we've got, perio, OMS, ortho, endo, general dental. I think that's it. So, just across the board, and they all feed one another. They're collaborating with one another, partnering, on various cases, complex or otherwise. We have, in that same market, we also have prosthodontics as well. So it's just, it's really from my perspective, being the CEO of the business, you want to put your head on the pillow at night knowing that, your doctors are doing the right thing. We've got great clinical outcomes being generated. And when the doctors are collaborating as they do, those are great. It's just a great spot to be in. So it's my job to help replicate that, as many times as we can.
Well, it has to really drive a good patient experience. I mean, it's awesome to not have to be bounced all over the place and to have that continuity kind of driven from the office that you plan to go see and return to in the future. So when you think about growth for Oakpoint overall, like if we look at the past, again, 3 to 5 years, there was a lot of M&A. It really slowed down over the past, 24 months. There was estimates that it would be picking back up. People expected interest rates to go back down. They have not. It feels like, we're still seeing groups that are acquisitive in the marketplace, but there's also many that have really slowed down their approach there. What is your growth strategy? Like, not just growth for the sake of growth. Like, how do you know when you're ready to continue to expand your operations?
So for us, like calendar year 2025, we're squarely focused on adding operatories inside our existing footprint. So, and really, truly, going deep and not wide, and working to optimize the facilities that we currently have, which is quite a bit. So we've got 15 operatories total across our existing footprint that we'll be adding this year. Most of those operatories will be online, no later than, let's call it September 1st, plus or minus a month or two there. just depending on build outs, et cetera. So, that's that'll be a nice lift for us, right? Average operatory, is roughly $250,000 a year on a per revenue basis on the general dental side, significantly more on the specialty side. So that'll be a really nice revenue lift for us. And we feel extremely confident we'll be able to execute on that just based on the fact that the schedules are booked out, 3, 4, 6 months, depending on the facility and the location, et cetera. So, we'll be able to really truly get some nice lift there. It'd be organic, highly accretive to the business. That's what we're focused on for the balance of this year. And likely for the first, quarter or two of next year. Love to be in a spot by, early to mid-year next year where we will start be acquisitive again. But when we look at our opportunities right now, there's, 6 to 8 monumental operational levers that we can pull and are pulling inside our business right now to really truly optimize and squeeze more efficiency out of the existing facilities. So, we're a big believer. A lot of people talk about rooftops. I'd much rather talk about, the quality of the earnings flowing through those rooftops as opposed to the number of rooftops. But that's just a philosophical belief in terms of how we operate the business.
Are you just happen to be the beneficiary of having practices that offer the ability to do additional build outs and add more operatories into those facilities? Or was there kind of a strategic thought at the point of acquisition, like, hey, let's find places that actually have the ability to grow out a little bit more? How do you think about that?
That's exactly how we think about it, is the latter part there. So we are truly looking at facilities where we have the room to expand. Hopefully we don't have to open up walls and push walls out. Sometimes we have to do that, but in a lot of cases you don't. And it's amazing how many facilities out there have the ability to add 2, 3, 4 operatories inside an existing facility, and the optimization of that, it just goes through the roof. So our ability to we spend a lot of time trying, and it doesn't always happen, of course, right? But we spend a lot of time seeking out those types of facilities. We can bring a lot of value to that. I mean, from our marketing machine that we can put on, flick on if needed. From the ability to source equipment efficiently, at better cost, the contractors that we've got at our disposal. Those are things that we can really bring to the doctor and partner with the doctor on, and that doctor can then continue to focus on the things that they love to do, and that's of course treat patients. So those are a lot of fun. And they truly are, and they require a lot of strategic thinking. You've got to really think through the plan. The team loves it. They get excited about it. And then when you look at the schedule and you see this, a schedule booked out, many months out, those are great challenges to have. Those are fun challenges to have and to work through.
So what becomes the biggest difficulty in executing there? Is it that you need to staff up and that you need to find new hygienists or bring on an associate? It sounds like buy-in typically is not a problem, but what do you find to be the road bumps when you're looking to expand within an existing practice?
I'd say probably the biggest one is on the staffing front. It is definitely a different environment, today versus pre-2020. There's just no doubt about it. It's more competitive. There's fewer people in the pool, especially if you're talking hygienists or specialists, right? It's just a small pool, and it's competitive, and you've got to be pretty savvy in terms of how you're recruiting and retaining, and benefit platform that you provide. It's got to be super competitive. All those different things come into play. But the equipment side, that's not an issue. The contractor side can be an issue, depending on what's kind of going on. But the staffing definitely remains, the most challenging, for us. And so we built out a human capital, team just focused, squarely on that. So we've got a dedicated team. We've got 2 dedicated recruiters, both front desk, that focus on both front desk and doctor recruiting. And then, our human resources team is fairly robust, just to provide the support to the dental offices, to the various, facilities. It's a lot to it, right? I mean, it's amazing. I mean, from an I-9 verification to, sourcing the person, there's just a lot going on there, right? It's a lot of steps in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been in dental for a bit now, and I ask this question semi-selfishly because I'm always looking for great guests to have on the show. But who are some of the folks that you've met over the years that you have a lot of respect for, that maybe you bounce ideas off of or use them as somebody to learn from as well?
There's a lot. I'd say, kind of going around the horn, when you think about just setting the business up properly and setting up your infrastructure properly. I've worked with the Dykema team for a decade and a half now. They're just phenomenal. They understand the space really well. They know exactly, how to attack it and how to put the infrastructure in place properly. So, that entire team has just been, phenomenal, and we lean, heavily on them, from Brian Kaleo to Dean Gould to Virgil Ochoa, Jenna Taft, Eric White. I mean, the list just goes on, with that team, right? I mean, they've just been absolutely phenomenal in helping us set up in the state of North Carolina, which is obviously a state, unique all unto itself for a whole host of reasons. And then, on the operational side, I think there's some incredible operators out there, that really understand the space, that that are deeply focused on providing operational throughput, through the facilities, and with the focus toward the doctor and the clinical team, and everything that they're doing is focused on that. And a few names that kind of come to mind there. John Klein, he's been the CEO of multiple platforms, and most recently an oral surgery platform. To me, one of the most respected individuals in the industry. Just somebody I respect deeply. Very thoughtful about how he approaches the process. You look at on the technology side. There's so many different players. Amal, one of the all-time greatest people in the space that cares deeply about technology and the patient and the experience and being efficient. You look to what some of the larger groups have built. I look at our business. We've got 45 locations. We're going to generate over 100 million this year in dental services across the footprint. And I tip my hat to the big players out there that are at 400, 500, 800,000 locations. Really remarkable. Really, really, truly remarkable. And I have deep respect for all the large groups that have been able to scale and get past that 200, 400 level threshold. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from those groups, right? I mean, they were once our size. So let's look to them and what they're doing, and be able to learn from those steps and learn from those who've gone before you, so to speak. Probably the best way to say it. So yeah, those are just a couple, and there's so many. I mean, I'll probably think of 20 other people, as soon as but there's just so much talent in the space, and so many great people that want to help and want to see you succeed, and those are the people we try to surround ourselves with, right? We're open book and as transparent as we can possibly be, and we'll reciprocate in any way we can.
Yeah, when you look towards the back half of this year, and maybe even entering into 2026, and it could be the build out of the practices that you just explained, because that sounds very, very exciting. What are you most looking forward to with the business?
It's called a half a dozen operational levers that we're really leaning into heavily inside our business, that are insanely exciting. And I'll tick through a couple of them because they're just, it kind of comes down to the ability to execute the process, and just working also to simplify. I think as human beings, we have a tendency to overcomplicate things. And whenever I feel like the business is getting a bit overcomplicated, I always kind of go back to the fundamentals. Are we answering the phones? Are we filling the schedule? Are we optimizing the schedule to the standards of the doctor? Are we recarrying? Are we collecting the money? And are we recarrying that patient, back into the system if it's a general dental practice or perio or what have you? And if we're not doing those functions correctly, let's go back to those basics and let's make sure we tune those up and dial those in. But across our footprint right now, we're completely consolidating our credit card platform. So we're moving to Square across our entire footprint. That's underway now and nearing completion. We'll be done with that sometime by June, let's call it June 10th, June 15th, the latest. That's an incredible initiative for us. We've been able to streamline the entire process. It's a tech-forward product. Square is a phenomenal product. The patients love it. You've got all sorts of technology woven in there. Text to pay, is just one example. So super excited about that. Second thing is, as on our hygiene front, we have through data learned that our hygiene team, can be performing at a much higher level than it currently is right now. Phenomenal opportunity, will help drive better clinical outcomes across the organization. The hygienists are starving and craving for that coaching and mentoring, clinical mentoring, and so we're putting all that into place right now. Incredibly exciting, and the team is fired up to put it all into motion. We've identified another project that we've identified that we have incredible confidence in is our oral surgery group. So we've got two fairly large oral surgery groups in the state of North Carolina. One has the ability to add an additional 4 surgeons across the existing rooftops that we've got right now. And so, we're actively recruiting talented surgeons that we can weave into this, footprint and bring them in the fold and help grow their patient base and cultivate just a great practice. So we're very excited about that opportunity. I mean, when you look at the schedule, when you look at the facilities, are state of the art. They've got the best technology. It's like, okay, we just have to execute. We just have to recruit and execute great talent. So those are some of the projects, and of course finishing out the 15 plus operatories that we're going to be bringing on line. We are insanely focused on those things. I'm a big believer. Don't get distracted with the shiny nickel. You gotta lock in, and we're locked in right now. The team's really locked into delivering these growth projects on time, within budget, and get those schedules filled and the facility humming along. So those are the ones that when I look at it, I just say, my gosh, I mean, if we could just execute on each one of those, incredibly accretive to the business, will provide top line and bottom line lift. These are fun projects. I mean, they're really fun to work on. They make you think, and I think the team appreciates that. So.
Well, that's fantastic, Mick. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed the conversation, learned a lot, and really like your approach to how you're looking at things.
It's great, Mike. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.